Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hands-on SAP Dev with Hugh Macro, that's me, DJ. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. It's Friday and the sun is out already. It's been very warm. I'm not sure my camera's okay. Yeah, my camera. I was going to adjust it slightly straighter. Oops, that's a bit high. I've got a wonderful piece of equipment which is a bit of cardboard underneath it just to lift it slightly above the monitor, because this new monitor, the bezel round the edge is so thin, which is nice, that the camera when it's on the top, the camera obscures some of the screen. Anyway, welcome Mark. How are you doing today? Der frühe Vogel fängt den Wurm. It does indeed. The early bird catches the worm. Same phrase in English. And the Jack 0616, good morning to you. Good morning. Nice to have you. I've just remembered. I need to start my Streamlabels app. Oh, what a fool. Of course. Right, there we go. Streamlabels is now running. What have we got in store today? Well, this is episode 32. And we had episode 31 on Wednesday, sort of a midweek, slightly off-piste live stream. So this episode 32 really is a continuation of last Friday's, which was episode 30. Greetings to Transylvania. Amazing. Good out. Is that? No, it's still morning in Transylvania. Greetings. Fantastic. Welcome and thank you for joining. And Fred, good morning, and HP. Moin, as they say. It's great to have you all. It's really nice. I'm really warm. I've got a fan going there. I've got the blinds closed. So we're going to continue with where we left off, really, with episode 30 last Friday. I'm still getting used to looking at the camera straight on. I quite like it when it used to be up there. But anyway. I want to take us on a little bit of a journey that I went on last week when I started looking into some more of the annotations and the vocabulary, and I thought, well, can I try this? Can I get this annotation working? Oh, I don't have any data for that. What am I going to do about that in my CAP bookshop service? So I'll take you on that journey, and we'll see where it leads. So I've got my coffee. I've had a nice espresso this morning with my La Pavoni espresso machine, my hand espresso machine. But I've got in my SAP Coffee Corner Radio podcast mug some of that coffee from Rave Coffee. Actually, I've been drinking Pat Coffee for a while. I've got my coffee beans from Pat Coffee, but I've been buying from Rave Coffee. I don't know where they are. Cirencester, I think. Sort of southwest-ish England. Very good. So got my coffee. The mic is on. Let me switch to main. Let's get started. We've got an hour. And I've got to rush off straight at 9 o'clock today. So there we go. And good morning to Southeast Upper Bavaria. Good morning, Gregor. I guess that was you. Yes, Lupomania. Fantastic. Very precise geographical good morning there from Gregor. Thank you very much. I'm wearing today one of my printed t-shirts. The future is terminal. ... And also a little prompt there, which I quite like. So I made that. I quite like that. And I've got my other one as well, which I may wear next time. So, given that the future is terminal, let's have a mess around on this terminal. Correct, I'm Gregor. Of course, everybody knows Lupomania is Gregor, right? Surely. Right. Lupomania, as in lupus, Latin for wolf, Gregor wolf, etc. It's a bit of a giveaway, really, isn't it? To us Latin scholars. Anyway, where we left off last Friday was that we had this classic bookshop thing. And I'm not going to apologise for using bookshop, because when we hit the ground, we can hit the ground running. We all know what it's about. There it is there. So let's go into bookshop. I'm going to use Vim today rather than VS Code, but of course you can do this in VS Code or whatever editor you want. Let's have a quick look. We've got our DB folder here with the CSV files, authors and books as normal, and we got the data model. Nothing changed there on data model so far, and in our service or server service directory, we've got, what we did was we kept the generated catalog service CDS file as it was. I think probably remove the @read-only thing there because there's no @read-only that I think get generated automatically. Oh, by the way, thanks. I just noticed, Fred, you've retweeted my live thing. Thank you very much for that. That's good. What I did do is forget to advertise it until about 3 hours ago on Twitch and on my Google Calendar. Actually, for those of you in the channel already, please let me know how you remember or get notified by for each episode. Is it just you look at the things on Twitter? I'm pointing over here because that's where Twitter is running. Or do you rely on the Google Calendar that I maintain? Or do you rely on the things I post on LinkedIn or in the Twitch events? Please let me know. Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. You've got a beer laden, a beer shop, like a bookshop. Let me go there. Actually, let me just go and bring that up here. 7 days ago. Okay, perfect. Beer laden using the SAP Cloud. Okay, so what does your service look like? You got your catalog service, beers. Well, obviously that's the most important thing. So excellent. Oh, maybe we'll explore that next time. Maybe we should switch to a beer orientated thing, and then we can sort of do some LinkedIn to Untapped and everything as well. Excellent. Thanks, Gregor, for sharing that. New Twitter UI is out. Only one entity right now. Yes, there's only one entity, but it's the most important entity. Exactly. So talking of entities, we've got the books and authors entity here in the catalog service file. And then if we have a look at the admin service, we played around with admin service in episode 29 just to have a separate thing here with this authorization concept exploration with the mock passport based auth stuff. I've just noticed actually that in my Vim CDS file, Vim CDS plugin, I just made a modification to the syntax, but it's actually not quite right, the modification. I'm still matching too much there. So there we go. Let's just go out of there and in there again. Yeah, it's still not quite right. I'm just trying to color highlight all of an annotation. Vim regex is a very strange flavor of regex. I'm used to sort of the Perl extended regex from long ago. But anyway, so we've got that, but we're going to ignore the admin service thing here. And we had these annotations. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what the annotations are. We're annotating just the books, and we're annotating using this UI piece of vocabulary. We'll look at what I mean with vocabulary in a second. And what we did is get rid of all the selection fields at the top, just leaving the search field. This is for the list report. So we're using the inbuilt fiori-preview service that appeared with the CDS Node.js runtime version 3.13, which is the most current, recent. Sorry, I've just noticed Jackson Turner. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you. SAP, can you give me the inside scoop on the S&P 500? Simple answer, no. I don't know what that is. Well, of course, I'm Standard & Poor 500. But I don't really follow what's going on there, so no, I don't. Or is that because you thought it was SAP, not S&P? I don't know. Please let me know what you mean. I'm not sure, sorry. Is that Emacs minus NW? I don't know what the NW parameter is. Is that like run as Vim or something? This is actually Vim running inside of Tmux. I'm going to close that Twitter stream because it keeps distracting me. I'm not sure. No, so this is Vim. Of course, this is Vim because this is DJ running it. So yeah, we've got the vocabulary for the list report. In the line item part of the vocabulary, we just define a couple of fields referring to the title of the book and how many items of that particular book there are in stock, the level. And then we also started right at the end of the episode last Friday. We added another part of the UI vocabulary to do with header info. We'll look at both of these in a second and what they look like. But you can see here that, for example, type name book when it wants to refer to the entity type in the singular, and of course when it wants to refer to the entity type in the plural, and then in the header info itself, we've got a title and description. And how do we know, first of all, that we can use the title? A title property and a description property, and that means here the title property, get the value for the title property from the title property in the entity itself. Okay. Oh no, Emacs minus NW is no window. Yes, I'm using it. So yes. Sorry for misunderstanding that, Jackson Turner. I'm using iTerm. I guess, yeah, I think you can actually see I've just changed the layout, so I'm just looking at what's going out broadcast wise on OBS. So you can see that I'm using a terminal emulator, and it's iTerm 2, and in that I'm running tmux, the terminal multiplexer, and within the first and only window at the moment I'm running I'm running Vim, but I've actually invoked Vim from Ranger. And Ranger is this awesome. Let me just quit out of there. So there's my shell inside the window of tmux, and I invoke Ranger with a small r, but that's alias to Ranger. And it's sort of like a file browser, which with lots more, and it has Vim key bindings. I'm a big Vim fan, as many people will know. Anyway, so that is that. And in fact, why don't we just explore tmux a little bit more, or just use another thing? Because what I'm going to do is use nodemon to run this project now, and to restart it if I make any changes to where is the thing here, make any changes to any CDS files or JS files in the DB or in the serve directories. Okay, so I'll do that, and I'll open up a new pane within this window here, make that a little bit bigger actually. There we go. That is old school. Old school is the new school. Hence my you may have missed this, but I'm wearing my T-shirt. The future is terminal. So yes, I'm a big fan of old school, I suppose it's called. But I do like it. Anyway, we're now running our service. So why don't we just have a quick look at. Let's put that in that corner there. I'm using all sorts of key bindings to move. So I've not touched apart from pointing to something just then, I've not really touched my mouse because it slows me down. I've even got I'm going to point to it here, a nice plugin called Vimian, which allows me to navigate my browser with Vim key bindings. So let's have a quick look at the books data first of all. There we go. There's the books data. Nothing surprising there. And let's have a look at the in Fiori, the Fiori preview for the books. So let's just make that a bit smaller. And that is the result of the annotations that we've got here. Okay, so we've got the selection fields. In fact, if I make that a little bit smaller, we can see everything. There we go. So the annotations here, the selection fields mean that there's no selection fields for the individual properties of the entity up here. This line item annotation says basically I want two elements in each line item. The first is has a label of book title, which is this thing here, and then the value for each of the lines is the title property of the books entity, which of course is Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, The Raven, and so on. Similarly with the stock level, we've got a label here at the top of the column, and then the value comes from the stock property, which is this number that was in the CSV. In fact, why don't we have a quick look here, books CSV, and I'll have that there. So there we go, there's the stock here in the CSV that we're importing, okay? And then when we select one of them, we can see books here is the books plural type name. And when we select a book, we get in the header info, the title, as in the thing that's in a slightly larger font, I guess, from a sort of semantic UI perspective. The title has or is given the value of the title property in the books entity. And the description, which is sort of underneath the title semantically and visually, I don't know what the word is to use, but there we go, it's there. That is taken from, well, it's taken from the name property of the author property, as in it's taken from the name property of the author navigation property, which points to the authors. If we have a look at the data model itself, we can see here that the author property of books is a managed association, a single association as well, a one-to-one, because there's only one author in this case. And within the author's entity to which it points, of course, we have the name property. So that's where it comes from. Okay, so far so good. Fridays for terminal, every day for terminal HP, every day for terminal. Come on, get with the program. So yeah, anyway. So Gregor says, it might be allowed, and I've moved the descriptions to the database CDS to be able to reuse it. Ah, perfect. Beautiful. Let's have a quick look at that. Let's move that up here. And let's make that full screen again. Ah, okay, yes. Yes, exactly. So what Gregor is doing here, which is really nice, is in his entity definition, in his schema, in his data model, we can tell that because it's in the DB folder rather than the service folder. So at the database persistence layer level, Gregor is providing, let's make that a little bit bigger, Gregor is providing not only the properties of the beers entity type, but also introduced by this and then ended by this annotation there. And of course, Gregor is doing it properly. Gregor is doing it properly and supplying the ID and the description in a sort of abstracted, internationalized I18N way, okay? Which we've covered in a couple of episodes, or a few episodes back. What does SAP do? SAP, I'm going to ask somebody on the stream to type some stuff maybe to Jackson Turner, but basically, to explain what SAP does, but basically SAP builds enterprise software and also runs enterprise software for organizations. You could say that organizations that, 70% of the world's beer, 70% of the world's chocolate, 70% of the world's car manufacturing is done all running on processes that are powered by SAP. Yeah, ERP software. Thank you, Gregor. Yes, there's a lot of software as a service solutions in the cloud and platform as a service platform as well in the form of SAP Cloud Platform. And there's a huge developer family, ecosphere around SAP, of course, as you can imagine. And what we're doing on this Twitch channel, hands-on SAP dev with QMacro, that's me, is sort of exploring some of the development together. And some of the development techniques and the libraries and the frameworks and the tools. So enterprise resource planning, ERP, enterprise resource planning. There we go. Okay, so that's that. I was exploring, in fact, let's go here. I was exploring this wiki page, which relatively recently updated, so that's a good sign. But this wiki page describes the UI vocabulary that we can use in annotations. And if we have a quick look back and say, for example, UI selection fields, UI line item, UI header info, we can see them all here. There's the header info, there's the line item, there's the selection fields, for example, there. So let's dig into line item to understand what this is all about. So I started looking at this maybe a week ago, and I looked at this vocab page initially. I thought, oh, this is really dry. I'll never understand it. But actually, staring at it for a short while reveal things to me that allow me to sort of navigate this and actually get some benefit from it, which you'll see in a minute. So don't get put off by the dryness. So we've got here UI line item. That's right, line item, and the line item term has a type data field abstract. Okay, so that's basically what the value type of the line item should be. And if we look at data field abstract, we can see things that that we can add. So we have a label here, we have a value. The value here, the data field itself. Where's the data field? Data field abstract. Let's go to abstract. Data field abstract. Let's click on that. Icon label, criticality, critical representation, icon URL. There's a value somewhere. Where is the value? Can't find it exactly. Value. If somebody can have a look at this, go back down here, and I'll paste that in. That's where I'm looking. Anyway, what I noticed was that if we look at the data field abstract, where is it? Let's go back again. Come on. Data field abstract for line item. Data validation. Data field there. Data field. That's what I was looking for. Right. Data field. The data field has a value, which is this thing, and it also has a label, but it also has other things as well we can put in there, right? An optional icon and a criticality. And I started thinking, okay, how do I get a criticality? Let me play around with criticality, which will force me to explore a little bit more about annotations and how they work, but also force me to think about how I might extend the current bookshop model to allow for this criticality type. So that's what I did. So we know we can add this criticality property. Let's make that again a little bit smaller. As one of the properties in each of the line items. And the criticality type is basically, from an enumeration, an integer. 0, 1, 2, or 3. 3 being green, effectively 2 sort of warning, orange, 1 being sort of raw, bad, alert, red, and 0 sort of being neutral. Okay. So why don't we try? I'll take you through the journey that I took in trying to fit this in and understand a little bit more. So criticality, so criticality has a criticality type. So why don't we add the criticality? I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to minimize that, and we're going to start working here. Okay, so let's get rid of this first of all, and why don't we say here, let's have a criticality level. Okay, so it's going to be 0, 1, 2, or 3, and each one is of course going to be the same, right? Sorry, what am I doing? There, right? There. So the stock we want to decorate, currently the stock looks like this. Let's go back there. Currently the stock looks like just a number. We want to decorate that with a criticality representation, okay, which is going to be sort of accessible as well. because it's going to have an icon and a color. So if we do that and save it, hopefully, yeah, there we go, node1 will kick in and we'll refresh that. And what do we get? Well, we get something that is slightly different, but there's nothing really there yet because we haven't got any values for the level, right? Mark says, what SAP really does, we help the world run better and improve people's lives. Yeah, ooh, yes, good. Thank you, Mark. That is a phrase definitely I recognise. So let's add something to provide level, okay? As you can see here, we're getting a warning right now. Property level does not exist in type books, okay? So what we'll do, first of all, is look at the data model. We want to add something here. Okay, level blah blah blah. But rather than just sort of hack it in at this level, as it were, what I'll do instead is think about extensibility at a really simple level first of all. Okay, so why don't we try and extend the data model with a separate file? Let's say we got the data model.cds from somebody else and we can't touch it, we don't want to maintain it. So what we can do instead is, well, first of all, let's modify, let's edit the book's CSV to add. Let's pretend first of all that when we've got 100, over 1,000, it's level 3, it's green. So these are sort of pre-calculated in the data. Now, again, this is not ideal, but I want to start at the very beginning. 95 is sort of a warning, maybe. 12 is definitely sort of, oh, that's really bad, that's really low, and that's okay. That's okay. 3 is that's okay. That's okay, and that's as a warning. Okay, so we've now got level data in our bookshop CSV. So we need to add a level property to the data model. And again, I want to stress at this stage, I'm doing it in the simplest way it could possibly work, and I want to move to something better than what we're doing shortly. So there we go, we got that. Now what we'll do instead, in fact, let's have a look, just remind ourselves of what's in there. In our DB folder, we got this data model. So why don't we say, we'll add a new file called level.cds and go in there and, yeah, okay, of course, because I've changed something in CDS, it's trying to reload, but of course it's got a new column in the CSV, but it can't find it in a table, so it can't load it. Okay, that's fine. What I'll do is I'll say using my bookshop as, well, what do we call it, just sort of for expressive purposes, as base from, in the same directory, data model, there we go, that looks good. And then we can say extend base dot, and already we can see there's this relationship that's being picked up by the language server protocol with level there. Let's write that, and it's restarted and it's successfully loaded that stuff. Now we can also see that the admin service is being used, the annotations are being used, the cat service is being used, the data model is being used, but this level file isn't being used because we're not referencing it anywhere, right? So if we have a look at the thing there, the preview, it's still the same. What we need to do, of course, is to go and, oh, no, cat service, no, well, there we go. Instead of taking my bookshop from the data model, we want to take it now from our level file, which has extended the definition of books that was in data model. So all we're doing, we'll change that first of all, and now we can see that we're getting level.cds pulled in because cat service is referencing level, and of course we're getting data model pulled in because level is referencing data model. I would just modify that. So now if we have a look at that, Great. Well, from a UI perspective, that's what we wanted to achieve. Well, that's what we've managed to achieve by hard coding the values in the CSV file and modifying the database persistence layer to have this level thing, right? Which, might be a scenario, but you can see the effect that we want to achieve here. Good morning, Mahesh. Oh, HP. Is the whole SAP UI vocabulary supported by the Fiori element list report, and how? That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I've not looked through the entire SAP UI vocabulary to be able to even make a guess at that. I would think that the UI vocabulary contains things that are used beyond the list report. That would be my guess, but I'm not sure. Yes. So maybe we should see if we can find out. See if I can dig into that next week. Yeah, exactly. So it's like it may be a superset, but it's certainly all the stuff that you can use in the list report is in the UI vocabulary. Exactly. That's what I think. That's what you're saying, isn't it, Gregor? Mahesh, no worries. What we're just doing is we're extending the bookshop to have this new level value that we can use for the criticality indicator, which is, if we have a look here at the annotations, hold on, let's do annotations in here, at the criticality indicator here, okay? So we want this new level thing, and we've just added it to the CSV, and we've extended the book's entity definition in a nice way. But now in the database, in our SQLite database, we've got this extra field, right? If we actually quit out of here, SQLite 3, what's it called? The database, bookshop.db. In fact, let's go into bookshop there. I don't know why it wasn't in there before. SQLite bookshop.db. Let's have a look. Schema. Let's go back up here. Yeah, there we go. So here we can now see that the books entity in the My Bookshop namespace, and we can tell it because it's a table, it's at the DB level, has now got this level property. But let's say we don't want to do that. We don't want to add anything to our database. So instead, let's just rewind some stuff, and first of all let's remove books CSV. Let's remove the let's remove the level. I'm sure there's a better Vim way of doing this, but I just can't think and type at the same time. We're now back to where we were. So if we run that again, is it started? There we go. Come on. There we go. Yeah, we're back to where we started. Well, almost back to where we started, because of course now at least there's a level property in the entity. Okay, there's no data in there, it's null because we're not supplying any values for that when we loaded it. So that's why in this case now, instead of just getting the number, we get this sort of neutral criticality representation, which is this grey diamond shape, instead of nothing at all. Okay, so far so good. How are we doing for time? Perfect. So now what we want to think about is, instead of supplying that as a hard-coded, let's call it static value, which of course, if it's coming in through CSV, it's being loaded from somewhere else, that somewhere else has to work out what the criticality is. And it might be that that's fine, but it might be that that's not their remit, the data suppliers, or it might be that the data supplier doesn't have the business logic to work out what criticality levels are appropriate, over 1,000, over 10,000, over 10, so we want to have the criticality logic in our service. So I guess no guesses for how we might do this in a non-static way, in a dynamic way. We can use the power of the CAP and power of CDS to build an extension, build an implementation in JavaScript, because of course this is the Node.js flavor of CAP, to calculate that field on the fly for us. We've still got it at the persistence level. It just happens to have nothing in it. Eventually we'll remove that from the persistence level as well and have it calculated on the fly at the service level only. That's the aim. So let's do that. So first of all, let's go into the, well, let's remind ourselves of what the annotation looks like. This is the thing that we want to supply the level for, okay, and it's an annotation for the catalog service, or the books entity of the catalog service. So why don't we remind ourselves of what the cat service is, which is the thing there. So what we really want is a JS file, the same name as the CDS file here for cat service. Okay. NodeMod has noticed that this file has been created, it's restarted, but of course there's no changes really. Except that, as you can just see here, if I make this smaller, is it still read? I'm going to make this font a little bit smaller. I'm assuming that's still readable. Let me know if it's not. It seems that's nicer for me actually. But we can see just here, I'm going to stop using my mouse, just here, that in the startup now, we can see that it's serving catalog service at /catalog, but it's recognized that there's a file with a JS extension, but of the same name as the CDS service definition file. So it's saying, I'm getting my implementation for this, maybe overrides or before or after processing of OData operations from this JS file, okay? So why don't we take advantage of that? And if you remember from a few episodes back, we've played around a little bit with, and I'm sure you've yourself played around with some JavaScript-based implementations for services. And if you look at Gregor's sitreg capm, I think, Gregor, correct me if I'm wrong, by default, I think you even create almost like a skeleton empty implementation for each service definition file, for each CDS service definition file you create as well, which is quite a nice idea. But anyway, there wasn't one here, so I've just created one. And we define it in the form of a module. So we're going to say module.exports and that's what it looks like, okay? Oops. Yes, thank you, exactly. So if we have a look at that, yes, admin service CDS, admin service JS, organizer service CDS, organizer service JS. Thank you, Gregor. That's exactly what I had in my memory. Perfect. Thank you, Gregor. So what we want to do is, now we've only got one service definition in here. Really, we should be thinking, because this implementation runs for all the services that might be defined in that file there. So if we had a second service down here, it would run for that as well. So really, we should say serve.name, as long as the serve.name is catalog. Well, in fact, why don't we say this? Serve.name, just so we can see what's going on. If you look on the left-hand side, we can see that, there we go, up here, that's the result of that console log, catalog service, okay? There's only one, so let's not even bother trying to sort of be good and do it right. So instead, all we'll do is we'll say serve.after the read for the books, after a read operation on the books entity, we're going to use this special parameter name. which will give us, which will mean that this function is called for every entity in the result set. And we'll say here, we'll just do it really simply, okay? We'll say each, oh, what do we say here? Each dot level equals, right, I'm going to use a ternary operator. Each dot stock is greater than 500. If it's greater than 500, give it a 3. Level 3, so it's green, good. Oh, I've just gobbed on my monitor. Otherwise, I don't know, otherwise give it a 1, okay? Let's just keep it as simple as that. Okay, and there we go, and we'll just close that. So now we're dynamically calculating the value for the level property in each of the entity results on an OData read operation. So now if we go here and oops, I'm too fast, there we go. Let's see what happens. There we go. So dynamically we're calculating the value for the level indicator that's used in the criticality annotation. And of course, 555 and 1000 are both over 500, so they go green because it's 3. And anything less, otherwise it's a 1, which is red, warning, danger, Will Robinson, etc. So far so good. Are we still okay? Let's let that sink in for a second. Let's go back here. We can actually use this logic shortly. By the way, I mean, I did have the reason I did want to do it like this with the ternary operator because if then else, if else, if else, if else, because of course you've got different criticality levels, more than just 2. And I did an if else, if this, then this, otherwise it's this, or this, or this, or this, and it looked really ugly. I'm just wondering, you folks here, do you have a preference between, the sort of if, else, if, else, if, else, if, else, if, else, or the switch statement? The switch statement, you can turn it around and do some really nice things with it. If you switch on the value true, and then in your case statements have an expression, then I think that's a slightly nicer way of expressing multiple levels of if-thens. But anyway, I digress. So what we want to do is remove the level property from the persistence layer, which means we have to remove it from the schema, as in the DB layer, and add it at the service level. So, because at the moment, it's, we don't want to change the database. This is a dynamic field that's calculated on the fly, so why not treat it as a dynamic field and not save it anywhere? We could possibly, I'm not sure, but we could maybe annotate that property with, skip the persistence for this. I'm not sure whether you can do it at the property level or whether you have to do it at the entity level. Hey, CD, Christian, good morning. Thank you for saying hello. That's always good. And you're always welcome, regardless of when you come. So thank you, and thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching the Tour de France. Is it the Tour de France or Tour de somewhere? The Tour. I hope you enjoyed watching that, and one of the live stream recordings that you were catching up on, which was great. So Gregor, could I overwrite data from persistence? Yeah, of course you could. I mean, not in these, not in the way we're doing it here, because of course we're just sort of catching the data as it goes out. Okay, but we can still use the CDS API to write some CDS query language to insert or update as well. So we could do that. Well, not within the after read, but I'm thinking that if we get access to the CDS root object, we can, if we wanted to, make a modification, not to the, we're making a modification to the data that's coming out anyway. We're making a modification to the response. in a similar sort of way to the stacked handlers we saw, or what they call them, the middleware that we saw in Express on Wednesday. Tour de France, perfect. So I could be wrong there, by the way, Fred. I'm not sure. It's worth trying. But anyway, we're modifying the response, exactly. And this is the whole point of this after thing here. We're modifying the response, which is the whole point of these sort of what do you call them? These bits of middleware, because we want to modify and add to or take away from, whatever response is going to eventually be served back to the requester. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Sorry. What do we want to do? Okay, what we'll do is, first of all, we'll edit the cat. If we look at the data model, that doesn't have the leveling. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go back to the cat service CDS and reuse it, not from the level extension, but back to where we started from. So there's no definition in the persistence layer whatsoever now. The level's not there. So now if we refresh, we should go back to stock level where there's not even a decoration. Oh, there we go. We get an error, right? Because why do we get an error? Because cat.js, because we're trying to add a value to a property level that is not there anymore. Okay, you can have annotations at the database level, but our annotations at the moment are at the service level here. So if you move level to service level, because our annotations are already at the service level. So that's good. But thanks for qualifying. Thanks for checking, Fred. All these are great questions. So we've now removed the level from the persistence layer. We've removed the level by removing it from the DB model layer, data model layer at the DB level. But of course, we're now trying to add something to a property that doesn't exist, right? So what we can do is have a look at some other way of defining sort of almost like something on the fly. And what you can do, and I had to ask somebody how to do this, so this is part of my journey, but I think it's definitely super important and really nice, hopefully, to share. You probably know that you can create a view, which is sort of like an entity, right? And effectively an entity in the at the service level translates to a view at the persistence layer anyway. But anyway, I'm going to say view. I'm going to create something, books. Why don't we call it critical? No, critical is the wrong word. Let's call it stock info. Okay, stock info. And we covered doing more interesting things than just a straight one-to-one projection quite early on, and those more interesting things were excluding or including. I think actually, Fred, you were at the first Inside Track, the first CAP Code Jam just before Inside Track Frankfurt. I think we covered exporting or importing in the Code Jam, didn't we? So we can do something more interesting than just a straight projection, but we can also as select from, right? And we know this is valid, what we're doing, because it's correctly found the things that we can select from. For example, books or authors, right? Books, but then we can have a clause to define which fields we want. So first of all, let's do that, which basically means all the fields. And in fact, what I want to do is just Let's remove that so we don't get the error when we refresh. So now we've got, ooh, Rafalt, thank you for following. That's great. And welcome if you're here as well. Super. It's always nice for people to follow because you can keep up with what's going on and get the notifications on Twitch, which is great. So thank you, Rafalt. Sorry, Rafalt. I said Rafat before. Rafalt. So yeah, we've got the CSV data load. We've got the data source. We've got the cat service implementation, even though it's not going to really do much. And we're not loading that base.cds, so we've not got the persistence layer level property. So now let's just refresh. And in fact, we go back here and refresh. We've now inside the catalog service. Let's go back again. We've got this stock info. So let's go there. And we can see the stock info is basically, as we've described it, just effectively the same as a projection, right? So it's as select from books, all fields. Okay, so we get ID, title, stock, and author ID. Okay. But what you can also do is define extra fields, okay, in a sort of SQL-y way. You've got to define something as a value here. I'm not quite sure why the syntax is like this. I want to dig into it a little bit more, but I wanted to share this with you first of all as level, oops, which is an integer, right? So we've now said we want to take all the properties from the books entity, which is this one here, and we also want a further property called level and have it as an integer. Okay, so this null as, I think this is, I was going to say plain SQL. I don't think this is CDS specific. I think this is SQL specific. I remember in Oracle or in Formix or in some other very old SQL, RDBMS, when SAP was exploring, running on different RDBMSs, that you could say, you could do calculations because there was this sort of pseudo table. Anyway, maybe it's related to that. So now, if we save that and go back here, we get now a level property. What? Which is amazing, right? It's null at the moment. And in fact, let's go back and have a look at the metadata. And let's just find level. Oop. There we go. The level property is where it should be in the stock info entity type. Yeah, not in the books entity type, but in the stock info entity type, which is defined by this view. It's an integer, and it sits alongside its sibling properties. The author ID because that's the navigation property, and the stock, and the title. So now theoretically, yes, Mahesh, I've just read that. So we can project something like net price equals some calculation. Yes, exactly. So why isn't level the last field? That's a good question. I was wondering that as well. But I think it effectively, it might be, I don't know, it might be the last field before the EDMX generator, before the OData metadata generator then turns its attention to all the managed associations and what it needs to do to add what properties to make those managed associations work. Exactly, yeah. I think you're saying exactly the same thing as me, Fred. All associations are pushed to the end. Exactly. So it's sorted out the navigation property because we've got ID, title, stock, and author, right? But in order to make the author navigation property work, it also needs this sort of relationship thing that is generated as well. So the author ID is at the end. That's my theory anyway. So why don't we now go down here and change that or add that back in again and see if we get an error or see if something works. Let's go back again. and let's go straight. No, let's look at the stock info. Yeah, let's look at the stock info. There we go. Oh, level null. Refresh. What? Ah, oh yes. Of course, this is stock info, not books. Okay, so this particular hook is being called for read operation on books, right? So if I now went back to here and chose books, we get the error because, of course, it's trying to insert a value for a level property on books which doesn't exist. So if I go back here and change that to stock info, you can tell I've not really planned this very well. Now go to stock info. There we go. We've got level 1, level 1, level 1, level 3 for Eleonora, and level 3 for hitchhiker's reality, of course. So now, hopefully, if we look at the Fiori representation of that with the annotation, it works. So now we have, yes, it is a very instructive error. I like making errors. I like hitting errors because solving them teaches me something. So now we have the stock level, which, let's remind ourselves, let's go over here actually. Let's go and bookshop serve annotations. There we go. Ooh. The stock level is now decorated via this criticality UI property in this data field type from the UI line item vocabulary part, right, that we saw on that website, on the wiki, right? The level is a property that, is what criticality looks at. Where is that level property? Well, it doesn't really exist. It's just calculated on the fly here for a property that doesn't even exist at the database level. It just exists in this view. So there we go. I think that works all right. Oh my God, 3 minutes left. That was more or less what I wanted to show you. It was a journey that I went on, like I say, last week. But I think it was a really useful journey because it shows us a little bit more about how extending existing CDS models and services might work. There's plenty more in terms of reuse and extension that is definitely worth digging into, where you've got an existing whole project and you want to reuse that project in your project. But I think we'll leave it there. Yes. Thank you, Fred. I'm glad you found it useful. I'm glad we're coming to an end as well because it's very, very hot in here. The sun's out. I never know whether to put the blinds up and open the window or not. Anyway, so yeah, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to finish a minute early, or 2 minutes early. Let me know. Hey John, sorry I didn't see you there. Good morning and thank you. Let me know what we thought of that on Twitter, and also help me please share the information about these live streams on Twitter, because I think that's probably the way that most people find out. But yeah, if you can share stuff on Twitter and retweet and whatever, tweet yourself, that would be great. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to finish this episode a minute early. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you a week today. Bye for now.